A Chinese startup just released the largest open AI model the world has ever seen, and within hours the most valuable chip companies on the planet started bleeding. This is Kimi K3, 2.8 trillion parameters, coding that trades blows with Claude, and a price tag a third of its Western rivals. And here is the part that has Silicon Valley uneasy. In just a few days, anyone on Earth will be able to download the whole thing for free. Welcome to a special AI Daily Deep Dive. Today, one story, all the way down. What Kimi K3 actually is, how it got here, and why it may have just rewritten the map of the AI race. Let us get into it. First, how this all unfolded. On July 16, 2026, Beijing-based Moonshot AI released Kimi K3. The launch was so hotly anticipated that it actually leaked a day early, when a promotion page appeared on Moonshot's own developer platform before the official announcement. From the moment it went live on the Kimi website and API, the model was available to use immediately. But the bigger promise came with a date attached. Moonshot said it would publish the full model weights, under a modified MIT-style license, by July 27th. In plain terms, this is not just a product you rent through an API. It is about to become a piece of software anyone can download, run, and build on, for free. That single decision is what turned a model launch into a global story, and it is why the reactions came fast, from developers, from analysts, and from the stock market. So who is behind this? Moonshot AI was founded in 2023 and is led by Yang Zhilin, a young researcher who has quickly become one of the most closely watched founders in Chinese tech. The company's name is a nod to Pink Floyd's album The Dark Side of the Moon, said to be Yang's favorite record. But the backers are pure heavyweight. Moonshot is funded by Alibaba, Tencent, Meituan, and HSG, the firm formerly known as Sequoia China. And the money has been climbing fast. In January of 2026, Moonshot raised a $500 million round at a valuation of around $4.3 billion, reportedly earmarked for compute and for building K3 itself. Then in June, Bloomberg reported the company was in talks seeking a valuation of roughly $30 billion. If that holds, it is a nearly eightfold jump in under 2 years, and K3 is the reason investors are willing to dream that big. Now let us open the hood, because the architecture is genuinely interesting. Kimi K3 has 2.8 trillion total parameters, which makes it the largest open-weight model ever released. But here is the trick. It does not use all of them at once. K3 is a mixture of experts model. For any given token, it activates only 16 of its 896 experts, which works out to roughly 50 billion active parameters, an activation ratio under 2%. So it carries the knowledge of a gigantic model while paying the compute bill of a much smaller one. Moonshot also introduced 2 homegrown ideas: Kimi Delta Attention, a hybrid linear attention mechanism designed to move information smoothly across very long sequences, and attention residuals, described as a drop-in replacement for a standard building block that improves how deep networks scale. The company claims this stack delivers about 2.5 times the scaling efficiency of the previous K2 generation. What can it actually do? 3 capabilities stand out. First, an enormous memory. K3 natively supports a 1 million token context window, enough to hold entire code bases, long documents, or hours of conversation in view at once, which is exactly what you need for long-horizon coding and agent work. Second, it is natively multimodal, with built-in visual understanding for images and video, not bolted on afterward but part of the base model. And third, it is built around always-on reasoning, meaning it thinks step by step by default rather than only when asked. That third point has a catch worth naming honestly. Developers noted K3 can burn a lot of reasoning tokens even on simple prompts. One tester clocked over 13,000 tokens for a basic request. Power like this is not free, and how efficiently it thinks is now part of the real cost equation. Now the scores. because this is where K3 earned its headlines. On the independent artificial analysis leaderboard, K3 debuted at number 3 overall, sitting behind Anthropic's Claude Fable 5 and OpenAI's GPT-5.6 Sol. That is not the top of the mountain, but for an open model, cracking the top 3 is remarkable. Dig into the specifics and it gets sharper. On a private long-horizon knowledge work test, K3 scored in yellow of 1547, a jump of over 700 points from the earlier K2.6. It posted 93.5% on GPQA Diamond, reportedly the strongest open-weight result on that graduate-level science benchmark at the time, and 88.3 on Terminal Bench. And on Arena's front-end code benchmark, K3 did not just compete, it took the number 1 spot, beating Claude Fable 5 outright. An open model, best in the world at building web front ends. That is the line developers could not stop repeating. But the number that really rattled the industry was not a benchmark. It was the price. K3's API costs $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens, with cached input as low as 30 cents. Line that up against the Western flagships. Claude Fable 5 runs around $10 in and $50 out. On a typical task, one analysis pegged K3 at about 94 cents versus roughly $1.80 for Anthropic's Opus 4.8, close to half the cost, for near comparable coding quality. Now, one honest caveat. K3 is actually more expensive than Moonshot's own previous model. K2.6 was priced at under $1 in and $4 out, so this generation raised prices. The story is not that Chinese AI is racing to zero. It is that a model this capable, at these prices, from a lab that will soon give the weights away, breaks the assumption that frontier-level performance has to come at frontier-level cost. And then the market spoke. To be clear, what follows is fact, not investment advice. When the K3 news landed, the pain hit hardest where the compute lives, in the chipmakers. Using live market data on the first trading day after launch, South Korea's memory giants took the worst of it. SK Hynix fell more than 11% in a single session, and Samsung dropped nearly 9%. Zoom out across the surrounding 2 weeks, and those declines deepened past 20% for SK Hynix, the technical definition of a bear market, though that window also captures an earlier compute glut scare. Taiwan Semiconductor slid around 3% on the day. NVIDIA dipped roughly 2% and briefly ceded its crown as the world's most valuable company to Apple, and reports had SoftBank down about 9%, with one Chinese AI peer falling as much as 30% in Hong Kong. Analysts had a name for it almost instantly, a second DeepSeek moment. So where does K3 actually sit on the map? Against the very top, it is a strong number 3. Claude Fable 5 and GPT-5.6 Sol still lead the overall leaderboard, and on many hard reasoning tasks the American flagships remain ahead. But the gap is now measured in inches, not miles, and on specific jobs like front-end coding, K3 is already in front. Against the previous generation, the leap is dramatic. That 700-point yellow jump from K2.6 shows how fast Moonshot is iterating. And against its fellow Chinese open models, K3 is not alone. GLM's latest is playing the same undercut on price game, which tells you this is a strategy, not a fluke. The takeaway for a viewer trying to get their bearings: the frontier is still American, but the fast follower gap that used to be a year or more has compressed to weeks, and the follower is handing out the weights for free. So why does this matter beyond one leaderboard? Start with the geopolitics of open weights. When a model is open, the weights leave the lab and belong to the world. Any developer, company, or government can download K3, run it on their own hardware, fine-tune it, and build products without asking anyone's permission and without sending data to a foreign server. That is a fundamentally different kind of power than a closed API you rent. It also lands in the middle of a live debate about U.S. export controls, meant to slow China's access to advanced chips. K3 is the largest open model ever, trained by a lab operating under exactly those constraints. Whatever the controls were designed to prevent, they did not prevent this, and now the resulting model is being handed to everyone, everywhere, at once. The timeline alone is the story. Anthropic's Dario Amodei had suggested Chinese models might close in within 6 months, and Elon Musk had pointed to early 2027. K3 arrived ahead of both. There is a second, sharper irony that developers latched onto. In the US, the most powerful frontier models are increasingly gated, held back for safety review, limited to vetted organizations, or wrapped in usage restrictions. So a real scenario emerges. A developer asks a restricted American model to do a task, and it declines, citing policy, then asks the open Chinese model, and it just does the work. One widely shared essay this week put it bluntly: whatever the theory behind gating American models was, the only people the gates constrain are American customers. Now, that is one commentator's argument, and reasonable people disagree about the safety trade-offs. But you can see why it struck a nerve. The fear driving the sell-off and the debate is not only that China caught up on quality. It is that the open, cheaper, unrestricted option might win developers by default, one project at a time, while the closed leaders argue about who gets access. So what should you watch from here? 3 things. First, the date that matters most, July 27th. When Moonshot has promised to publish the full K3 weights. When those land, expect a wave of fine-tuned variants, local deployments, and independent benchmarks that will test every self-reported number we discussed today. The real verdict on K3 gets written after the weights are out. Second, the money. Watch whether that reported $30 billion funding round closes and whether Moonshot moves ahead with a rumored Hong Kong IPO, because that is the market voting on whether this momentum is durable. And third, the response. Watch how Anthropic, OpenAI, and Google react on price, on access, and on whether the gating strategy holds. The deeper question K3 forces onto the table is simple and unresolved. In a world where the second-best model is open, cheap, and free to download, what exactly is the moat? We do not know yet. But after this week, everyone in AI is being forced to ask. That is our deep dive on Kimi K3, the largest open model ever, a lab racing from $4 billion to $30 billion in valuation, a chip market rattled, and an uncomfortable question hanging over the whole industry about what a moat even means anymore. We will be watching July 27th closely, and we will bring you the verdict once the weights are out. If you want more single-topic deep dives like this one, subscribe, and we will see you on the next AI Daily.